Hello, and welcome to this edition of Motivation and Money, with me, Mark Terrell, and my co-host Fanny Snaith. How are you today, Fanny?
Very good. Thank you for a
Excellent,
Tuesday.
good stuff. Well, me and Fanny have a quick sort of chat before we start off, and we come to the conclusion today, mainly because
Yeah.
I suggested it, that we should talk about philosophy. Now, not philosophy, that we're not going to go down a massive hole of philosophies, but what we need to think about is how we live our lives, and philosophies have a part to play in that. I have a philosophy around motivation. Fanny has a philosophy around money. And obviously, we all run our lives and our businesses with some sort of philosophy behind it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Fanny, have you got anything that you want to kick off the conversation with in particular?
Well, bearing in mind you suggested it, I think it's probably you that kicks off with it. However,
Okay.
when you talk about philosophies, that's what you mean by that is how we think and feel about things, well, how we discover things. And would I be right in saying, right, I've just been looking this up, that could be described as axiology?
One of them, yeah. I spent a little bit of time looking at philosophies, and there was lots of philosophies.
There are
There's
four main
Stoicism.
types.
Well, yes, I got that bit because obviously when you Google it, all these things come up.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated by it. But axiology, the branch of philosophy that considers the studies of principles and values.
Well, I
These
think
values, is that what you're
that
saying?
is it. I think that
That's
the
the one.
values thing is what really sort of connects what we talk about each week.
So
And
how are we going to apply that today then?
well, I think one of the things that we help our clients with is that they're in a place where they want to change something. We don't work with anybody that's happy with everything that's going on, and for whatever reason, they need our help to move them from A to B or C or Z or whatever it is.
Yeah,
So one of the first things we've got to think about, and I think when we talk about values, and then we've got the characteristics and the way we do things behind that, is
yeah.
what is it that we're not doing, and but also the things that we are doing. So there's two things here: what are we doing that's stopping us, and what are we not doing that's stopping us?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Interesting, actually, because what are we doing that's stopping us? What are we not doing that's stopping us? So when you were talking about that, I was reviewing the clients that I'm working with at the moment,
Hmm.
um, and there's been a lot of focus at the moment on all of them really on practical finance.
Hmm.
So about what we physically doing stuff. So we can spend hours going through all the mindset of money, which is really important because it's generally the mindset that is the blocker that actually stops us from doing whatever it is that we're doing. But it's in the back of their mind, obviously, that they know that they need to do this stuff,
Hmm.
but there's some kind of thoughts within them and maybe their own philosophies that actually stop them from doing that.
Yeah.
But what was quite interesting is that I've been really taking a deep dive with them, possibly more than I have done actually in a while, because some of the clients I've had have been quite good at doing, once they've been sort of like funneled into getting to do their money map and stuff, they've been quite good at doing it. But at the moment, there's a lot of hand holding going and I'm really enjoying it. And it's really what's happening with the clients is that it's really getting them to question their values and thoughts about how they've been living their lives.
Yeah.
Don't know, just
There's
say.
I'm going to say at this point, there's a great video, and I'll share it in the comments when we finished. I can't do it just at the moment, although I probably could actually, but I won't because it'll distract me. Called "The Science of Character." There's a video out there. It's 8 minutes, I think,
Called
and
what?
the
The
science of
science of
character.
character. Okay, cool.
And really, what it talks about in that video is about the positive psychology, about the character traits that we used to be taught at school, but because of other things that come into the curriculum, character teaching of character is now not done in our schools. It's when we
What do
used
you
to
mean
be
by that?
taught a religion at school, that was very much based around, you know, character and all those sort of things. But now, obviously, in the UK, that doesn't happen. So when you think about character traits, then we need to think about which ones that we need to develop to get the things that we want in our life. So this sort of links in with philosophies of, You know, you've talked about Buddhism in previous episodes. Stoicism comes to mind, on all these sort of philosophies, which are backed up by character traits and developing character. Yeah.
So does that include things, do you think, like courage?
Yes, definitely.
Because I think courage is a huge one for
Yeah.
us to, because if you've got courage, you're going to give stuff a go, right?
Yeah, definitely. And then on the back of that, you need a bit of perseverance and grit to keep going when the going gets tough. Because you know, we've talked about this, is that especially in business, is that, you know, what keeps you going? You know, what's the motivation that keeps you going, or what is it that drives you and keeps you doing the things you want to do when, you know, when it would be easier to sort of say, oh, you know, let's go and do something a lot easier, something that's not quite so difficult.
And actually, we do tend to live in quite a sort of throwaway society too,
Mm.
don't we? Which I don't just mean about physical stuff, even though that seems to be changing, which is just great. But with relationships too,
Hmm.
you've only got to look at the divorce rate for that.
Yeah, well, I think it's about, yeah, that throwaway thing. Oh, I'll try something new. Oh, I want the quick fix. I want to do something that gives me results quickly. All those things, you know, we're used to getting things very quickly. So back in the day, now I know I'm a bit older than you, Fanny, but I remember there was only 4
I
channels when I
don't
went to
think
school.
you are, you know. I think I'm older than you are, actually.
Really, there you go then. So when we went to school, there was 4 channels, and
Back in 18,
we had to
back in
watch the channel when it was on live, and if we
18, yeah.
missed it, we weren't going to watch it again unless we had a tape recorder, a video recorder, which was a big investment, wasn't it? If our
Well, they
parents were
didn't
fair,
exist. They
hey,
didn't exist in the beginning.
well, that took a while for them to come in, but you know, if we missed it, you know, that was it. But now you don't miss anything because you can either record it, you can catch it up. It's somewhere, you can find it somewhere to watch because you never miss out. And now even you don't have to wait for the series to come out. You can watch it and binge watch it on the day one. So we're used to that. You know, have it now. I want it now. I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait till the next week. I'll do it all in one go. And I think when we come back to when we're running a business, that's one of the things that we need to learn, is that we can't have everything straight away. We got to understand the steps that we got to take, and if we skip some steps, sometimes that means that we will have to learn those lessons later on. I'm a sort of a believer in that. Excuse me.
So that the word that's coming up for me right now is commitment.
Hmm.
The other thing that's coming up for me right now is how important it is to enjoy the journey, not just look to the destination.
Yeah.
And actually, interestingly, you know, both of us have been recently through your book launch. I'm doing my course launch, building up membership course sites and all this kind of stuff, which is just like, could be so easy just to go, do you know what? I'm not gonna bother. But actually, as you're traveling through, I made the point when I was like nearly in tears yesterday, trying to get something sorted out. I physically said, no, stop. You've done all this personal development. Use it. This is the time to use it now, Fanny. Had a little a little voice tapping inside my head. It said, just stop for a minute, turn around and look at what you've achieved in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And that's that thing, isn't it? Getting halfway up the mountain and stopping and turning around and going, it's okay. We're making progress. We're moving forward.
Really important. It's focusing on like what you've achieved and how far you've come, and not getting fixated on how far you've still got to go.
And that's part of the motivation, right?
Motivation will keep you going, but you know, if the prize is something that you really want, it will keep you going, won't it? But if the prize at the end is something that you don't really value, then it's more likely that you will fall off and not carry on. It's when you've got that drive that keeps you going for whatever reason it is. If you've got, whether it's purpose driven, whether it's, you know, money driven, whether it's whatever it is, if you're clear on what that is and you know what it's going to give you when you get there, then you're going to keep going. But if it's just well, yeah, but when I get there, so what? I'm just going to be able to do whatever it is, and it's not really going to add to anything else. It's not really going to be that meaningful. It's not going to be. I'm not linking it to something that's going to be life changing or anything, and that's when it gets tough, or we're likely to actually throw in the towel and not really go that far. So it's when people talk about purpose in business, I think people get far too philosophical, and we're not talking about philosophy today. As
Oh
long as
yes.
we know what the purpose is and it's
Yeah.
right for us, that's all that
Mhm.
really matters. We don't have to have a business that changes the world. All we've got to do is have a business that has a purpose for us, keeps us going, and gets us up in the morning. And we know why it gets us up in the morning. That's the key. And
Yeah,
if,
I
if
like that actually, because I think it's very easy to hang out in places on social media whereby if you're not changing the world, then you're inadequate.
hmm,
And
yeah,
actually, we don't all need to change the world. And it's very age related as well.
hmm,
I mean, I'm 23 now. So it may be that I don't want to do anything, do too much. I'm not saying that I'm old and decrepit or anything like that by any stretch of the imagination. And I certainly don't behave like that. But,
hmm,
we all have our own reasons. Yeah, starting with our why
hmm.
isn't, well, there you go, Simon Sinek, eh?
Yeah, exactly. And I think people get misled in regards to this big why. You
So
don't
let's
have to have
have,
a big why. As long as it matters to you and you know why you're doing what you're doing and it's connected to something, that's what keeps you going. Especially when things are getting tough. Yeah.
yeah.
And,
Have you
and
got
like
any?
when you're launching something like you're doing at the moment with your course and with the book and all the other stuff that I've been doing the last few months, there are times when you think, I wish I didn't have to do this, and it's
Yeah,
mainly around marketing. You just wish things would just happen, but you know that if you don't do it, you'll regret it because you think, oh, I should put more effort in. And also, the thing that keeps you doing it is there is a drive that I want to, I've got an important message, or I want to connect with certain people that I want them to be able to read the book, or I want them
yeah,
to change their attitude to money because I know it would change their life and all that sort of stuff. But that's the purpose, isn't it? That's that deeper um, difference you're going to make. That difference you're going to
yeah,
make, and the outcome that you're working towards is important.
yeah, yeah. No, that is really important.
Mm,
So for person sitting there listening to us right now,
mm.
what do we do to motivate, help, or to help them right now, this second? How do we get them to question what's going on with them?
Okay, so I started this off talking about philosophy. So the first thing I'd say is think about the philosophy you live by, and how that fits in with what you do. So there's obviously lots of elements to that. And what do you actually working towards? What's important to you? What are the things that you want in your life that you are actively seeking? And then think about the actions you take to make those things happen. And are you actually doing conscious things to make those things happen? And I think the easiest thing to focus on, and we've talked about this again, is what you haven't got rather than what you've got, because it's difficult to set goals around what you want. More difficult, I should suggest, because you start thinking about, well, do I deserve it? Whereas if you're moving away from something again, like we talked about in the last episode, is understanding what is it you're not getting at the moment that would enhance your life or your business, and what do I need to get it? And sometimes those things can be quite simple, simple tweaks in what we're doing, which sort of goes back to our philosophy of how we do things, just by looking at things a little bit differently. So one of the things that I tell my clients around, especially if they have obviously if they have a team, but it's actually noticing when people do things that are right, and if you're not doing that, and if all you're doing is catching people doing things wrong, then the people tend to then switch off eventually because they just don't feel as if you're noticing the good in them. They're just all you're doing is trying to catch them out and tell them when they're doing something wrong, but the other stuff that they do right is taken for granted. So
Yeah,
catching people doing things right can have a massive effect on the way people perceive you, your relationships, and how, when things get tough for you, when you've got a team, how you are received when you have to basically bring somebody back on track, or bring somebody, tell someone that they're doing something wrong. People aren't going to listen to you if you've in previous occasions you've actually pointed out things that were right, and not just when things are wrong. So just one example of changing your philosophy of how you go about running your business and how you speak to your team.
Yeah, so that's gratitude, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's probably going to run through a lot of their life,
Yeah.
as to thinking about, because if you're constantly looking at, well, that needs to be better, and that's gone wrong, and that's gone wrong, that's generally having a lack of gratitude or
Mm-hmm.
appreciation in one's life, isn't it?
Yeah.
That would be, so therefore looking at their philosophy, maybe if they're looking at their philosophy, they want to try and improve something, maybe that would be then to bring in gratitude and appreciation across the board.
Yeah, of others, and of their current circumstances, the things that are right, the things
Yeah,
that are going well, and appreciating those things are going well, and without them, then obviously those things being right, because again, we talked about this in the past. We're great at noticing things when they're wrong. We can
yeah.
do
Oh
that, and
yeah. And I think what's really interesting is it seems so obvious when you talk about it in this context,
Mhm.
but actually out in the world, it's really, really easy, and easy to forget. So, for instance, I mean, if I go back to looking at my family and my mum, she was very much about pointing out what was wrong, or you always feeling like you were never quite. It was never, whatever you did was never quite enough.
Yeah.
And actually, that can also come from like working in a team where somebody will say, look, I've done this and I've achieved this, and the manager goes, yeah, that's really good, but next time do more and do that. So it's always trumped by doing something else. We used to have there was a school, and they had a headmaster who was really, really results driven, sort of across the board.
Mm.
And I remember the teachers telling me, they said, he was a lovely, lovely guy, but you'd never quite done enough.
Yeah.
You never so you always felt like it was all it was all a bit pointless. So it's that sort of thing. It's
But
quite interesting.
the people that you remember in your life, and the teachers that are obviously a great example with, are the ones that did give you some great feedback and tell you when you do things right, and you really
Yeah,
appreciate it, because it makes a massive difference, because most people don't do it, and most people don't either do it well, they don't do it enough. And I'm not saying that I'm brilliant at this, but being conscious about it
yeah,
makes a massive difference. If people start to think about the importance of noticing when things are going well.
yeah. I mean, it's like I've just started working with an apprentice, and she put a post out on Instagram the other day. And it was like she put this picture of this elephant, which I used, had it in my library because we talk about money being the elephant in the room.
Mm,
And she created this post, and I was reading it, and I was going, "Did you do that?" She went, "Yeah." I said, "Oh my God, that is absolutely brilliant." That's so, she was writing about how long it took, how about elephants' trunks and how close they were with their mother and how they communicate and stay in the herd. And it was
mm,
all totally relevant and all this kind of stuff. I just went, oh my God, that's brilliant. I just saw this amazing beam of smile, big smile came
mm,
across her face.
yeah.
And it was fantastic. I was going, yeah, absolutely brilliant. And it's really important to appreciate people, to keep them motivated.
Well, yeah, it's those little things, isn't it? And that just noting, so that little bit of creativity. I mean, if you think about the way our society is set up, and particularly in education, we don't get an awful lot of feedback or with regards to our creativity. It's about conforming, making sure that we do the tests and make sure that certain things are up to scratch. But if we do
Mm,
something that's a little bit creative, there's no
yeah,
real reward for that. You can say, well, we do art, but art, being creative is not just about being artistic. There's lots of
no,
things. Creativity
absolutely
is
not.
about solving problems and doing things that people you do things in a way that maybe nobody have done before. That
Yeah,
and it's rewarding that, and celebrating that, and being able to be rewarded for that, which is in our education system is quite difficult. I don't think it's really set up for that. And
No.
with regards to motivations, when you're a youngster, if you're not motivated academically, then it becomes quite tough. And there is so many, talk about the entrepreneurial stories you hear, where how many are them that they say, oh, I never got on at school, I was a dropout, I missed loads of lessons, never, but then they're a fantastic entrepreneur, multi-billionaire, and all that sort of stuff, which you think, well, what went wrong? Why wasn't that picked up at school? That they had some other thing rather than academically being great? Why weren't they sort of found out to be more of a
Nurtured.
creative? Yeah,
Because you don't fit the rules at school. You
yeah.
don't fit, you don't conform. And actually, do you know what though? What about this? For those people that happens to, maybe school was the biggest gift they could have had.
Mm-hmm.
Because actually they're sitting there going, this is rubbish, this is not me, this is not how I work. And they develop that rebellious streak that actually goes and fires up their laurels, or whatever we say, that actually catapults them into the next place.
Yes, you're absolutely right there. Yeah.
Maybe the academia would have kept them down. So let me ask you a question then.
Mm-hmm.
What would be, I don't know if this is too personal. I don't think it's too personal. I think you should answer. I think you should answer this, Mark. What would be one philosophy that you would say is something that you live by that helps you be motivated?
Well, linked to what we just talked about,
Yeah.
always look for the good in people, even if they are, acting in a way that is completely against your values. Because what I always say to people is there's something that's led them to behave like that. And we don't know what it is. It's a bit like, walk in their shoes before you start criticizing them and all that sort of stuff. So that's part of one of my philosophies is, don't judge someone until you know the story behind what's going on.
Do you know what? That's one of mine too. When I listen to my daughters slagging people off or doing whatever, I go, yeah, but you don't know. You don't know where they're coming from.
Exactly.
You don't know what their parents have been saying to them for the last 15 years. You don't know anything about this stuff.
Yeah, we're all brought up in our own way by our parents, and then we become parents, and we bring up our kids the way that we see fit, and we adapt. And what we do is we take what we thought was the best bits from our parents and reuse them, and then when we think actually I think that wasn't quite right, and we adapt ourselves to be hopefully better parents. But then who's to say that's better? It's just our way of seeing the world. So
well, and also even if you do, from my experience as well, I sort of think, right, so I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, I don't want to be like that, I don't want to be like that, right? And you follow all that, but you can bet your bottom dollar that one of your children is going to go, do you know what, you used to do this, and you go, oh my god, that didn't even come on my radar.
Yeah,
didn't even think about that one.
Well, you've only have a certain amount of influence, haven't you? I mean, there have got other influences, and even more than one. And we've had in the past. They've got social media and all the other pressures that go on with regards to that. So, but going back to the philosophy thing, it all links into how we lead our lives. How we've been influenced with our education, our parents, all the other things lead to whether the philosophy is the right words. Some people might say it's not really philosophy, but whatever the right word is, we have a way of running our lives, leading our lives, that for whatever reason we do it that way. But what we need to think about is what's not working for us, so that we can adapt that philosophy, learn from others, so that we get better outcomes, the outcomes that we really want. And that's where sort of my idea about philosophies fits in.
I think it's interesting though, because I think sometimes we can have a philosophy, or like, for instance, we can read a lot of information and we can go, yes, that's right. Yes, that's yes, I agree with this. And yes, that's definitely me. And then we go off and we do something completely different. Or, we, like, for instance, we all know that we're supposed to lead fit and healthy lives and get exercise and all that kind of stuff. And yet sometimes we get trapped into a cycle of not respecting ourselves, not caring for ourselves in the way that we should, even though our philosophy is saying this. So where's the mismatch there then, do you think, Mark? I mean, I've got my theories, but where's the mismatch then, where we know the philosophy that we would like to live by, but actually we're not really doing it?
I think it comes back to that short-termism rather than long-term things, because we get quick fixes, don't we? So when we're feeling a bit down, and although we've committed to ourselves to be healthier and eat less biscuits and cakes and do more exercise, when we're feeling a bit sort of sorry for ourselves and things aren't going quite so well, we want some sort of quick fix, and so we reach out for those things that make us feel a bit better about ourselves. We've rewarded ourselves for something. I think that's got something to do with why we don't sort of stick to something, because we can't feel the difference things are making. We can't actually measure things. So I just thought about something with regards to fitness though. What I use with regards to fitness is I measure when I go to a fitness class by using a MyZone app, which gives me feedback to show that I'm making progress. So when we are setting ourselves a target and we want to go somewhere, and we want to sort of encourage new habits, what we need to try and do is give ourselves some sort of check-in with how we're progressing that we can measure. So the way that the MyZone thing works is that when I do activity, it gives me points for that. It tells me what points I need each month. And when I get to the end of every month, if I've done that amount, it gives me a nice little reward to say, congratulations, you've done the recommended amount this month, which tells me that I'm on the right track. It gives me that I'm doing enough. I'm doing something that's actually hitting the mark. So I think when people fall off from, particularly when they're doing things that like fitness things, it's because they don't feel they're making enough progress. They don't feel as if it's making the progress that they want to, or there's nothing to show, or they're not slimmer, they've not lost weight, but they're not getting the feedback that they need. In other words, pensive Fanny.
Yeah, maybe. I think it's a mixture of the both. I think that, and I go on about it just after having listened to a lot of stuff from this guy Jim Fortin, who I now consider a mentor, and it's about setting a goal or setting a track to follow, and actually from the context, from a different context. So if you are, the fitness thing is always a good thing to go by, right? Because it's quite an easy one to go with. So for you, you've got your little thing, but there's a commitment in your brain that is telling you that you're going to do this. The question I have is, what happens to those people who give up halfway through? I mean, you're not giving up because this app seems to be working for you, but that doesn't happen to everybody. So for those people who go in all gung-ho, and then a couple of weeks later, it's raining, and
I think the two things is, firstly, the goal that you are moving towards isn't clear enough. So to lose weight isn't a goal.
No, you need an actual weight.
You need an actual weight, but also what happens when you reach that weight? What do you suddenly stop? So maybe a better goal is to be fitter so that I can do something, or so it's a more of a wider sort of, I want to be able to do this, and if I don't get to that weight, then I won't ever be able to do this. So I think that's one thing, being clear about the actual outcome you're working towards, and also getting little milestones along the way, which is what the MyZone stuff does for me, is that you're making progress, even though it might not appear that you are. Then you know that you're going in the right direction, and someone or some gadget is telling you that. So,
but what's your philosophy behind all that then?
So it's a feedback thing.
Driving that. No, but what's driving you? What's the no? Because you have to go back. I think you have to go back a further step. What's the philosophy that's driving you to do the whole thing in the first place?
What to exercise?
Yeah.
The philosophy is that I believe it's something that we must do. If you don't do it, then I know what happens. You just get sluggish and you feel better for it. So it's no more than that I know that we all need to move more. So and making sure that, or making myself do it when there's other options, those things just make me do it because I know that I need to get to that points total at the end of every
Mm,
month.
yeah.
So it's stop us
I
falling off
think
the
with all
wagon, as it
the
were.
I think with all the philosophies that we all have going around in our heads, it's sometimes quite difficult to spin all the plates at the same time, isn't it?
Yeah,
So I guess having a what do they call it? Sort of pillars
yeah.
of guiding principles.
Exactly, and I was going to say that because what we need to do is we've got to have our own philosophy so that we can understand it and it's not too complicated.
Yeah,
And one of the things we do is take out the complications because there is no shortage of information out there. We can get information on everything we want to. My job and your job when we're coaching our clients is to distill the information that's important and make sure certain things must be done, and disregard things that are unimportant. That's our role, is to focus on the
yeah.
things that are important and not get distracted by things that are quite easily can take us off track. So
And when our mind wanders, like for instance, again, I was talking to a client. He sent me a message today, and he just goes, "Oh my God, I just feel like I've completely gone off the rails. I'm having a look at how much I spent on this, and it's an enormous sum of money, and I just feel like, this is all, it's just hopeless." And this, and I went, "What do you mean? What do you mean? You feeling like you're going off the rails. No, you're coming onto the rails. You're not going off, you're coming on, because you've got to the place of awareness. So you're
right,
actually finding
yeah,
out what's happened, so that now you can actually start living by the principles. You're saying you want to achieve this financially, but you've been living this other life.
mm,
You're actually bringing everything back into line." And you sort of
yeah,
went, "Oh yeah, oh yeah." So this is like a boon, right?
yeah, 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 yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
like, yeah, yeah,
Anyway,
interesting.
sadly, the half an hour has ticked away. I'm not sure whether we've solved anything, come to any conclusions there, but I think philosophies play a big role in our lives. So it's a good idea to be clear on the philosophies that
I
we
think
live by.
that's the first thing. That's the first thing, is to be clear on your philosophy. So how do people get clear on their philosophies? What's their first step? Sit down, have a think about it.
Sit down and write them down. I think that's the thing. What's important to you.
What's
Um,
important?
so yeah, journals are good for that, aren't they?
Yeah.
I've slipped off the wagon journal wise, but I'm going to start journaling again. I think in the next, I will have started by the time we next speak, which
I
won't be.
think sometimes we talk about these morning routines, right? Of getting all
Yeah.
this stuff done. Well, I start my morning routine at 5:30, and by 11 I'm about finished. There's
Yeah,
so many things to do.
I know, I know.
It's quite
So anyway,
right.
so sadly our time's well, it's pretty much up.
Yeah.
So Fanny, you've talked about your course. Where can
Oh,
people find
yeah.
out
So
more about your course that's coming up?
Well, first of all, I'm doing a webinar tomorrow night, which is called, what is it called? It's called How Money Matters, How Your Hidden Money Drivers Are Making Your Money Worries So Hard to Shake Off. That's a really catchy title, isn't it?
Okay, cool. Is there going to
That's
put a link below so people can
I'll
get
put a
that at
link
some
below.
point?
I'll put a link below, and there's an event set up in LinkedIn which people can see, and you have to register for a Zoom link,
Cool.
because if not, you won't be able to come in. And then obviously the course My Money Makeover starts on the 5th of April, and yeah, there are still spaces. It's 350 quid, just 350 quid for a 10-week online blended learning course where you have video
Oh,
tutorials, but we meet once a week for very interesting coaching conversation about money. You get lifetime access to the material. It's going to be a special start investing module in this one too, which hasn't been there before. So yeah, if you fancy turning your life around at the beginning of the new tax year, come on
fabulous. Yeah,
down.
that's in a couple of weeks away, isn't it, in the UK?
Yeah.
And for me, I've got not much to announce, but hopefully next time we talk, which will be a fortnight because I'm not here next time. So hopefully we can do this in a couple of weeks' time, Fanny. Which I'll be talking about something that's in the pipeline, and I'll be sharing that on the back of my book. And obviously, you can buy my book either from my website or from Amazon, which is Motivated. And that would be fabulous if you'd like to read
We
that book.
usually show it, but it's not
And
here.
also, if you catch this and you've read the book, then a Amazon review would be marvellous. That would be super duper. So, thank you, Fanny, for a great conversation as always. And I hope you have a great couple of weeks, and hopefully we'll be back here in a couple of weeks' time when I'm back. And until then, everyone, if you catch this on a replay, then please leave some comments. We'd love to hear from you. But until the next time, ta-ra for now. And see you
Ta-ra
then.
for now. Yeah, take care. Bye-bye, everyone.